Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be the 5-position tier list for patch 7.32D, and being the last tier list we're going to be doing for all the positions, hopefully there's no patch like next week. I mean, there is only like 1 week left until I believe the DPC starts, so I'd be very surprised if they do a patch, and if they do, it's going to be a small one, I believe. So I don't think they will. For my sake, I hope that's the case, but obviously I do hope there is a big patch later, like maybe after the first DPC season, because I think we're all kind of hoping for a pretty big patch eventually. But anyway, this is the final tier list for the 5-position for the week and for this patch. And as always, before I jump into it, I just want to tell you that I get my info from like the Trends tab, Dota Buff, Dota 2 Pro Tracker, the previous Pro matches in the DPC or the qualifiers that just happened a few weeks ago. And then I mash all that together and do kind of like a pub list, not exclusively for the high tiers like Immortal or anything like that, but just like general pub list. And so that's what I do. That's where I get my information. Like I said, I put my opinion in there as well. And if you like the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Those things always help as well. So now let's just jump into the first tier, the S tier heroes. The first one is Treant Protector. And I'm going to be honest, I don't actually really know, as we hear Tiny talk as well, I don't actually know why Treant is so good, but it's being picked. It's like the most picked 5 position in on Dota 2 Pro Tracker. It has a really good win rate. It has like a 57 or 8% win rate on Dire, I believe, and even like a 52% on Radiant. And yeah, I don't really know other than the fact that this hero is just Treant. I mean, it does all the things that Treant has always done. I don't believe there's any like crazy buff to the hero. I mean, the shard was changed or was introduced where now it does that like root thing again, I guess, when you punch people. You know, you go invis, you're in the trees, and then you can punch them and it roots them. Your ultimate is obviously really good. It's always been pretty good because this AoE root is really good. I think roots have become better and better now that like they pierce a lot of things. It's hard to get out of them. It even stops BKBs and all that kind of stuff. I think that makes this hero really good. I think it's another one of those things that I've been saying over the past few videos this week with this meta is that a lot of heroes have been nerfed. And then because of that, a lot of these other heroes that have been just slowly, you know, in the background getting small buffs and not been doing too much have kind of gone up in value. And Treant is just one of those. He's also a very good lane dominator. So because there's a lot of like range supports, you kind of want this beefy or ranged carries. You want this like beefy frontlining, annoying 5 position, which I think is very good when you kind of pair those two things together. So, you know, you have a Drow, you have a Clinks, you have one of these ranged heroes sitting back, kind of, you know, plunking at you from range. Very hard to go on, especially when you have a Treant backing them up. And then if they ever catch you out of position, they can usually like do a lot of damage. And so Tree's very good in lane in that way when you pair him correctly. And so that is just Tree, honestly. I think the ult's very good. The vision is good. You can also obviously split push and do some kind of very annoying things. You can farm pretty well. It just does a little bit of everything that you want from a 5 position and has a very good laning stage. And I think that's the thing, is the early game is really good for this hero because it's hard to lane against a Tree, honestly. Basically, the way you lane against this hero is you just like buy Quelling Blade and cut down the trees. Honestly, that's what you have to do almost certainly. So that's Tree. I'm not going to spend too much time. Maybe someone in the comments will let me know because if you know, you guys have more insight, but I'm not really super up on why this hero is like so good right now. Like I've watched some replays. I haven't seen anyone talk about anything specific other than just the general stuff that Tree does. So yeah, that's Treant Protector. Next, we're going to go with Silencer. Silencer has kind of been on the upswing. He's been getting buffs and buffs and buffs and buffs. And I think what they're trying to do is make Silencer like mid or core more of a thing. Because this guy does have like, you know, a right-click skill. So like a buff to his ranged damage, like kind of like a Clinks or a Drow or like these other heroes that are popular right now. But for whatever reason, he just never seems to get to be a core. It just always seems to be like even though he seems to be similar to like a sniper or one of these heroes that sits in the back, it just doesn't ever work out that way. And I think the big problem with it is that BKB is just way better against this hero than like a lot of those other heroes. Like you can deal with BKB as a Clinks, as a Drow, as a sniper, as a lot of these other ranged heroes. You just can't deal with BKB. Like all of your spells just get countered by BKB. And I think that's the big problem with the hero. But regardless, that's the core of Silencer, like trying to become a core, then pushing this hero as a core. And so when they keep buffing the hero to try to make it a core, they kind of inadvertently keep buffing it as a support. And so I think that's why this hero is so good right now, is because obviously the silence is always going to be a key major aspect of the hero. Unless they like drastically change that and then try to make this hero more of a core, so change the ultimate. Really, in a lot of ways, as a 5 position, you are relying on your just pressing R in the team fight, and that is a huge part. Not to say that it doesn't have impact. It does have huge impact. But I think the reason that this hero is really good right now is because, like I said, it was getting little buffs all over the place. So now, if you've ever played against a silencer, which I'm sure you have, this hero does insane damage. Like, pretty much all 3 of his normal abilities are just ridiculous. You can just harass people down like crazy with your glaives. Like, it's ridiculous how much damage you do. And then if you choose not to go glaives and you choose to go because you feel like you can't right-click them, you need to be at range, when you max your other spells, your curse, your silence, all that kind of stuff, dude, you just like, you silence somebody, you curse them, like they just take infinite damage. It's like similar to Ogre Magi and his like damage over time spell. It's super annoying, and when you get the talent and it just like drains all your HP if you're a squishy hero, that's like Silencer, except you don't even need a talent and you just need a few levels and you just melt supports. And even cores sometimes, they have a hard time laning against you because you can just put these 2 spells on them and they just have to run away and there's like nothing they can do. It's absolutely ridiculous. So you're not just like a bot where you press R anymore. You actually transition into a damage dealing core in a way from the 5 position, which is kind of crazy. The weakness that you have is just the fact that you don't farm. I mean, his spells, although they do damage, aren't really good against creep waves. And yes, his glaives can help him farm, but not really. So it's one of these things where if you can get some items, if you can have some impact, if you can actually hit people in fights and use your spells, you can be really effective. Otherwise, it might still be a little bit underwhelming. But otherwise, he's still really, really good right now in general. And then last we have Ricky here, and I'm just putting Ricky as a 5 position, even though I think it's a little bit more of a 4. People are still playing it as a 5. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is really popular as a 5 too, but I think it's more of a 4 in any case. But the same reasons that it was a very good 4, it's a very good 5. It's just a good support overall. So I already talked about it in the soft support or 4 position tier list, but basically this hero in the past was like a carry from the support role where you had to buy these carry items and stuff like that and you wanted to do damage. But now you don't need that because you have this dart, you have this cloud, you're just invis, you're like a Nyx assassin, you're just setting up kills, you're just scouting out, you have so much impact without actually having to do damage. And then you, of course, can. If you really are snowballing, you're getting a lot of ganks, you're getting kills, you're participating in kills, you can then actually become another core as well with your damage. But otherwise, you're really just like scouting. It's a lot about vision, stunning people with the dart, and then really being annoying with the cloud. Because the cloud is like super annoying, man. It's like that miss, the AoE silence, you can really never count that out. And BKB or Hurricane Pike are like the only things that save you from this cloud. Because, I mean, you can't dispel the cloud. So that's huge. There's really nothing else like it in the game. I don't believe, if I can even think, there's no real other AoE silence like this that is just not dispellable. So it's very difficult to deal with. And then you're getting set up on with the shard and all that kind of stuff. So that's Ricky. Pretty straightforward there. I would say the laning stage isn't the best with the hero. So you just have to be wary about that. Because like the first couple levels, like what really are you doing other than maybe clicking a guy and jumping in on him? But still very good, especially later into the game once you get the shard. And next we have A tier. So A tier, we have Tusk. I already talked about him in the 4 position tier list, and he's basically just the same in the 5 position. It's just that he's just not as good of a 5 position because you want this hero to. It's like a matchup thing, As a 5 position, sometimes you might have like a Spectre you're laning with, or, some hero that's a little squishier, doesn't want to be aggressive. And when that's the case, sometimes it can feel bad because this hero just wants to run in like a psycho. And so if the enemy off lane combo is strong and you can't run in, or your carry is weak, that can feel kind of bad. I think that's the main reason that this hero is better as a 4 and not as good as a 5. But otherwise, it kind of all does the same thing. Like there are a lot of heroes like Slark, like Ursa, that are popular now, and even the ranged carries that have like slows or damage that you can still get aggressive with. So that's why it's really good. I also think you would like some items on this hero. Like you would like a Blink Dagger, but obviously as a 5, it just takes a little bit more time for you to get that item and for you to have impact with it than from the 4 position. So I think that's the other thing. Is this hero, it's not like, you do a lot with your abilities, but you would prefer to have some items at least. So that's why it's A and not S. Next, we have Snapfire. This is just an overall good support at both roles. It does literally the same thing from both roles. I feel like it's almost better as a 5, though, because you don't scale as well. with this hero, but it's still very good either way. You farm quick, you have a little bit of everything, stun, mobility, damage, a good ult. Like, you just have a little bit of everything. I already talked about her in the forward position, but overall this hero is just really good. Another one of those where I think the kit, I think I talked about it before. This is like the Mars of supports. It's a new hero that the kit is just so good in so many different ways that even though they keep nerfing it, it provides a little bit of everything, and it's always going to be valuable on a team. Like, there's never going to be a team where you're like mad about the fact that you have a Snapfire. It's like never going to happen. Where like Tree, even Silencer, Ricky, like you could say, oh, I have this, it's a bad matchup, like a bad pairing. It's very rare that you're going to say Snapfire is a bad pairing with any hero, because it's like a strength hero, it's tanky, it can kind of go in, it can kind of be close in the fight, it can also be a backliner, it can do like everything, honestly. Clockwork, another hero that's just like all around good. It's good as a 5, it's good as a 4. I talked about it in the 4 position video, but I think it's almost a little bit better of a 5. It's just hard to say. It's just from the 4 position, you just want to have more impact. So I think it was a little bit lower down. Maybe it was B or C tier, but I think as a 5, it's a little bit better because you don't care as much about just sacrificing your body. You don't really care as much about just hooking in, stunning somebody, just being annoying, and then just either feeding or just getting out, forcing out. Like, it doesn't matter as much from the 5, where these days with a lot of these 4s that are transitioning into a 4th core, it just makes it so it's a lot worse and more punishing and not something you necessarily want to do to just go sacrifice your life. But as a 5, that's just great. Like, if you can have a lot of impact stunning through BKB or like initiating the fights as a 5 and like I said, being annoying, then that's great. That's going to be enough impact for you in the fight, and I think Clockwork can do that. He's also pretty good in the lane. Obviously, it's the same kind of thing with Tusk, is like some lanes are like, it's annoying if you can't run people down with your battery assault, but a lot of times you're going to be able to. There's going to be situations where you can with this hero. Next is CM. I think CM has been like on the upswing in recent patches in the past year. I think like maybe a year or so ago, it was absolutely terrible. Like, CM just seemed like a dead hero, but then they kept buffing the mana aura, and basically that you get like mana back when you cast spells. I think it was like probably S tier, maybe a patch or so ago. They did nerf it a little bit. So even though they did nerf it a little bit, it's like it didn't like tank the hero into oblivion, right? They still left it have the same thing where you're casting spells and you get more mana back and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's the biggest thing, is in the laning stage, like when you play against this hero, it just really feels like you have infinite mana almost to some extent. Like it just feels like you're running in and you think, oh, Crystal Maiden, going to cast a few spells, and then they're done. They have no mana, because that's usually one of the weaknesses of the hero. It's like a Jakiro or something where, they cast a few spells and they're out of mana. But it's like, no, the CM just seems to have infinite mana. They buy like a Clarity or a couple Mangoes, and they're just like spamming you constantly. And with these annoying slows and this lockdown, it just allows your carry to just take so much advantage of that. And then obviously it scales into the late game a lot better with the Shard and the Ags and all this different stuff that you can buy now with this hero. So it's not like you're just this, especially with the ability to be able to move in your ultimate, it's just so much better now. That's like, it's very slow, obviously, but that little change is really, really important, because you're not just like standing there and then they run away. So that's really, really good. Next, we have Disruptor, another one that's kind of been on the upswing. I think basically ever since they changed its the glimpse to do damage, this hero's really good now, because it's not just that like, oh, I want to run away and now you're glimpsing me back. It's also that the further I run, like the more damage you're doing to me, and I can't just like blink out of it, because damage, I do a damage instance, or I take damage the instance I come back. So I think this hero's overall really good. And then if you get Ags, so if you're on the offensive and you're winning the game, it's really good with Glimpse. But then even if you're losing, or you're not having a great game, if you can manage to get an Ags on this hero, it literally can turn games. You can just straight up win games with the Ags on this hero. But yeah, I think that's the big change that made this hero good, and I think it's pretty good overall. It also is really annoying for heroes like Slark and Ursa and some of these more popular heroes to have to deal with this kinetic field, because they can't like jump out of it. So that's Disruptor. Next we have Undying. So Undying was kind of top tier. I think it like was nerfed a little bit, but it's still very good as a 5 position. I mean, this Tomb's still really good. Your ultimate's still really good. Decay still does, still was changed and does a shit ton of damage. So there's nothing too different about this hero. I just don't think it's as good maybe as it was when you had the Tomb and the Wraith Pact and like everything on the ground and you're like, what the heck do I hit? It's just not as good, but it's still pretty decent. I mean, it still does all the same things it's always done. It just may be a little bit more matchup dependent. You want to make sure you have a good lane, because you are spamming abilities, and that can be super annoying to deal with, but it can also be annoying, like almost for yourself, because you're giving them so many stick charges. But if you're against the strength hero, maybe 2 strength heroes potentially, like you can honestly just destroy the lane 1v2. That's still definitely possible with Undying. Next, we have Enchantress. So Enchantress isn't really... I put Enchantress in A because Enchantress does have a decent win rate on Radiant, but like it's weird because its Radiant win rate overall I think is like almost 60%, but its Dire win rate is like in the 40s, which is really weird because most heroes these days have like a high Dire win rate and a low Radiant win rate. That's just like the Dota 2 Pro Tracker thing I'm seeing, and I don't see that it's super popular. Like it's not getting picked a lot, so I don't really know what it is about the jungle that is making this hero so good on one end but not the other. So I put it in A tier just because of that. I think maybe I should have, I don't know, if I had to redo the list, maybe I would put it in B tier because it's okay, and it's really specific. It's almost like a cheese hero. Maybe I'll just adjust this, put this out here. I think this is like a cheese hero, basically. That's what I'm going to say. It's like, if you know how to play this hero and you know why it's good and you're watching pro replays, like I think this hero can be broken. Like you can honestly straight up carry games from 4 or 5 position with this hero. But if you're not like an Enchantress player, I don't think it's very good. So it's almost like it's either A or it's like F, honestly. And then Mirana is the final A tier. This tier is better, I think, as a 4, but it still can be played as a 5. Like you can still do all the same things. It's just you're not going to get maybe as much farm, but it almost doesn't even matter. The only real downside is that you have a 5 position with no reliable ability. In other words, you have an arrow with a stun, but a lot of times you like your 5 position to have some kind of reliable stun or control. So like you look at all these heroes, they're relatively reliable. Obviously, Clockwork Hookshot is like a aimed spell, and Snapfire, you kind of have to aim Cookie and stuff like that. But it's still, these spells are generally easy to hit. This one needs some setup. So if you don't have a stunning off lane, stunning 4, stunning mid, it can... Having a Mirana 5 can put you in some bad positions, but at the same time, it's almost like a silencer where you just press R, and that's almost good enough half the time, to be honest. And you're almost always going to have stun to set up with this hero. So that's Mirana. I already talked about her in the 4 position list as well. So that's A tier. Now we're going to move on to B tier. So B tier has some like classic, 5 positions that are they're fine. They're nothing special, but they're good. They're still okay. You can still definitely pick them. Jakiro's one of them. This hero's just decent. Overall, just a really well-rounded hero. I think the problems with the hero I kind of already mentioned when I talked about CM is just like this hero, you cast like 2, maybe 3 spells. You have like no mana left. You're also pretty slow, so if you do put yourself out of position, it can be annoying. And your spells have like long cast time and can be easily dodgeable, but if you're able to get some farm, get some Yules, defend towers, not get jumped on, and maybe have some mangoes, get early mana boots, this hero can be really, really annoying and really good overall. I mean, this long range AoE stun and this his ultimate and his damage and his attack slow, his ability to siege towers, all these things are really good. It's just good all around overall hero, does a little bit of everything. It's just like your good average support. Ogre, kind of similar, I would say, but does all the same things Ogre has always done. Is a bruiser, hard to deal with in lane, does a lot of damage, has the stun, and really the thing is like basically buffing up your carry. That's what this hero does that other heroes don't do as much. Like there's not that many heroes in the game that really just like straight up buff the carry in like a very obvious and specific way. Like later we'll talk about, Oracle and some of these saves, but this isn't like a save. It's just like straight up, here is a guy that has way more attack speed. So if you have anybody on your team that benefits from that, which like almost every team does, like almost every carry does, it just makes the potential for late game to be way better. Like you're just going to have a better carry almost 90% of the time. Like 90% of the time, a carry with an Ogre on their team is just going to be way better one-on-one or, matching up against the other cores than a carry without an Ogre. And that's just straight up how it works. But overall, obviously later in the game, like you're slow and you're stunned because you have to get pretty close. It's just not as valuable in the hero. Like the hero's other spells just aren't as good. Then it just becomes about like, buffing up, and that's kind of boring. Not only boring to play, but just not as much impact. Next, we have Dazzle. Dazzle's kind of been like on the upswing, and then kind of people really try it, want to be, they want to make Dazzle really good, but then it kind of always seems to come back down and level out somewhere in the middle. They've just been buffing it like crazy, and they buffed it again, I think, to make the his Q, his main harassing laning spell, to last a little bit longer, I believe. But even then, it's still not enough to make the hero insane because it still is a hero without a stun in the 5 position. Even though you have a good slow, you can actually, I guess you do get shard, which is very good. and you have the save. It's just still one of these kind of situational ones. And I think a lot of people don't really love to just like rely on the save, like this passive save hero. And that's especially because in pubs, it's just not coordinated enough. Like people are getting picked off. Fights are just chaotic. People aren't really, they don't have the right positioning when they're going in the team fight, and they're not just all smoking together and sitting in the back, and like the spells aren't being cast correctly. So I think that's why these healing supports like Dazzle, Omni, Oracle, all that kind of stuff, they're just never as valuable in pubs unless they're like completely broken. Otherwise, I think Dazzle's pretty good. I mean, you can do a good amount of damage. You can really be annoying in lane. You do have a save and heal and all that kind of stuff. A little bit of a well-rounded hero, like I said, but just no stun. And I think that's the big problem with the hero overall as a support. I'd almost rather see this hero transition into a core, to be honest. Because it lacks a stun, it just almost seems like it'd be better as a core. Next, we have Omni. Omni was like pretty good, I think maybe like 6 months ago or something. Like he was like S tier because of the way his Dispel worked and stuff. I think they nerfed it a little bit, and he's kind of come down since then, but I don't see a lot of Omni. He's not getting a ton of play, but when he is picked, it's pretty good, and it's obviously matchup dependent. If there's a lot of magic damage, maybe you're not as good, but if there's a lot of physical damage with your ult, and there's something you can save, a lot of purgeable spells, it can be very good. But just sometimes you can feel useless. I think this hero is like feast or famine. It's either really good because of the matchups, or just really, really bad because of the matchups. And so because of that, in pubs, it's just not as valuable because you're like first picking it, and then it's like, well, it's kind of just random because like people, maybe they'll pick to counter Omni and then it's a terrible game, or maybe they're just dumb and they just don't counter it because they don't know what they're doing, and then it's a very good Omni game. It's just kind of up in the air because of that. Next, we have Dawnbreaker. Has actually come down, not as good as a support, like is more of just an off lane these days. But I mean, when it gets picked as a support, it can still do pretty well. I mean, you're still saving with your ultimate. I think there's like a talent, or is it the Ags, or is it, I forget what it is, but if you can manage to get there where it does like 70% mischance in the ultimate, that can be very, very helpful as well. It's just not as good as it once was. I think Marcy and Dawnbreaker were like the broken supports, but they're just kind of on the downtrend with a lot of the nerfs. So that's pretty much Dawnbreaker. Nothing more to be said there, really. Oracle has kind of been on the upswing. I mean, Oracle is like doing well when it's getting picked, but it's like just not as popular as a lot of these other heroes. So like we have Dazzle, we have Omni, we have Oracle, we have Winter Wyvern. They have decent win rates when they are picked, but they're just not picked that much. And that's kind of the key, is like, where do they actually stand based on the fact that they're not picked? But again, if you have good saves, if you're able to, if you know how to play Oracle and can play this hero well, I think it's really good. But I just feel like there's so few people that know how to play the hero because they're often messing up the spells. You don't want to just cast your ultimate on yourself. That's completely useless. But if you can get an Oracle that's just like going on a rampage, like getting 10 kills in the first 15 minutes because this hero does insane damage early game, it can be very, very effective. Again, just pretty situational. And then Winter Wyvern, I think this is one of the strongest supports, like I said, maybe 6 months ago. But it's kind of fallen off, maybe even a year ago. I don't really remember, but it's kind of fallen off since then, but it hasn't got completely nerfed into the dumpster. It's just not nearly as good as it once was. Back when it was like, even like being a mid and it was buying Witchblade and stuff, I think they've just nerfed it overall. And so it's kind of come down as sitting in a more reasonable place. You're still decent overall. Again, middle of the pack, average B tier. I don't think Winter Wyvern's doing anything crazy. I think, in the past, its strength was the fact that, like, if there was a spec, like let's say Spectre is on your team, and Spectre's a really popular hero, just being able to save the Spectre and heal Spectre back to full is like super valuable. But I don't think with a lot of these ranged heroes that are good in like the mid or even like obviously ranged carries, you don't really want to be freezing them in place and saving them. And there's also a lot of magic damage coming out from a lot of heroes these days. So that's really annoying. And also, because of a lot of the ranged heroes, it's a lot harder to get people trapped into the AoE of your curse. And I think that's one of the big things. I think it's all about matchups with this hero. So those two things, I think, make this hero just not nearly as valuable as what it once was. So next we do go on to C tier. And we can see Marcy is the first one here. Marcy has just been like giga nerfed. I think this hero is like more of a 4, less of a 5. In previous patches, this hero was like a carry and a 4 and a 5 and an off lane and a mid, like just basically everything. I think mid was the only thing it really didn't play that much, but you could still get away with playing it mid. I think now it's more of a 4, possibly an off lane and a carry. I think those are the only two things, or the 3 roles it's in now. I think it's not as much of a 5 because the whole thing is the laning stage has been nerfed a lot. The spells are not as good until you level them up. So now you need more levels, and now you want farm. You need to get your BKB, potentially a Basher. Like, you need to scale to be this 4th core. And that's how you have impact. And from the 5 position, that's just not where you want that to happen. And so it's definitely viable, but just not as good. And that's mainly why Marcy's down here. Lich is decent. Lich is okay. It's kind of been on the rise. I think they're trying to buff this hero. I will say I've seen games where Lich is just absolutely OP. The shield is super annoying. His shard is actually really good, I think. But then sometimes Lich can feel like you just do nothing. Like, it just feels like terrible sometimes. It feels like you can never get a good ult off and you're squishy and you just die. But this hero can have insane laning stages. I think paired with some heroes like Ursa and Slark, like you can be very, very aggressive with these heroes, with the slow and with the shield and all that kind of stuff. So it can have very good matchups, but other times it can be very bad. I think it's just pretty vulnerable as well to like just feeding. Because it doesn't, like, it has a stun, but it's a fear, and it's awkward. I think you're like a ranged hero, you kind of want to sit back, but you have to go in, and then you're squishy. It's just very awkward with the positioning on this hero. Chen is just down here in C tier. Chen's almost like, I don't know, like an Oracle or something where like nobody's picking it, but if you're good at Chen and you know how to play Chen, and when Chen gets picked in higher on Mars, it is doing well. It's just that it's not a Chen patch. It just has been nerfed over time. You can still do stuff where you get like the crazy skeletons and push towers. You can still do that. And overall, I just think in pubs, it's not as good of a hero. So I'm just going to put it down here, but it's not like D or F because it's still semi-viable and pros can still play it. Phoenix is okay. Again, suffers from similar things to like Dazzle, where having a 5 position that has no stun can be very annoying. But you can have very good lanes. You can have very good games. You can kind of dominate, and you have this great ultimate. It's just kind of like a feast or famine hero again, like some of these others, where sometimes it feels like this Phoenix is just absolutely ridiculous. You are having a great laning stage. You're doing insane damage. You're chasing people down. You pop your ult. Nobody can hit it. But then at the same time, there's a lot of ranged heroes now. Like I said, ranged carries, getting a lot of items, having a lot of attack speed. Lina is a very good hero. Sniper, very good hero. And so it almost feels like no matter where you cast your ultimate, it's going to die. So if you see Phoenix picked, it's very rare that this hero actually gets its ultimates off and they are, not just killed instantly. I think also with people just like playing with around Wraith packs and, Undyings and stuff these days, people are just way more in tune with like hitting the things on the ground, right? I feel like that's just kind of one of these things that people just are used to doing that more. And that's Phoenix almost is weird because like wants to bait you in, and people are just way better at dealing with that these days. Vengeful Spirit, a pretty good hero overall. I think with the kit, like they keep improving how this hero works, but the problem I think is even though you like the fact that you're sacrificing yourself and all that kind of stuff as a 5, you just really want the Ags. If you can get the Ags on this hero somehow as a 5, like, and you're having a dream game and it's a decent Ags timing, like you can just win the game straight up. Like your hero is insane. But if you can't get Ags and you're having a bad game and your team's on the back foot, it really just feels like you're swapping a guy in and then you just feed, and then like the guy doesn't even die half the time if it's like a core because he just pops BKB. And then if you swapped yourself in, you just trade support for support. It's like, does that really matter? So it's just, that's why it's a little bit awkward. Otherwise, if you could get Ags, it's good. Bane, just bad because Silencer, to be honest. I mean, this hero seems okay, but I think a lot of things have been taking advantage of it in the laning stage, although it's pretty good. It is still squishy. So it has some good matchups in the lane. But then later in the game, I mean, your main thing is, yes, you have good setup for Mirana. So if Mirana's in the game, obviously that's a classic combo. But then like your main thing is, I'm going to gank or I'm going to get in the team fight. I'm going to press R on somebody and like they're screwed, right? But Silencer's such a good popular pick that you just can't play. Like it's just unplayable. It's like one of those things in Dota where it's just like hard direct countered and there's nothing you can do to fix that. Like it's just, there's nothing you can do. Even buying Ags or whatever, which you're not going to get, which you have like the illusions, Silencer still just completely destroys you because of that. Next, Abaddon is one of these like healing save supports, but I think it's just like the worst one of those that we see right now. I mean, I think all these other ones are a little bit better. And these healing save supports just aren't super popular. Abaddon just feels super weird because it's like a weird backline save hero that wants to play, to like help and buff up the carry and like heal people. But then you're also like this weird unkillable guy that kind of wants to go in and click people to take advantage of your passive. So I think this hero just almost like needs some changes. It needs change so that it can either become more of an offlaner or like more of a support. And it just, one of those things has to happen, or the spells need to be buffed to be really powerful for this hero to start getting play. It hasn't seen play, I think, in a little while. There was some times back, like maybe a few years ago, where it was like really S tier as a support, but it's been a long time since that's been the case. Next, we have Gyrocopter. Gyrocopter is a hero that I've talked about, in a lot of different tier lists because it's like it seems to be playing almost every role. But really, as a carry, as a farmer, it's like just dead as one of those kind of heroes, because those heroes are just worse in general. But also, it's just the worst one of those kinds of heroes. So it just seems to have fallen off a lot. So now it's really all about like rocket spam and getting your shard, which can be very good. But it suffers, even though you do have a stun, it suffers from a lot of the stuff that these other like not stunning heroes have, like maybe a Phoenix. Is like the rocket can be easily dealt with, to be honest. Like if the team is not dumb, like they can easily just kill the rocket, especially later on in the game when they have a lot of attack speed and they're like ranged and stuff. So it just feels like you're all or nothing in on this rocket, and if it's not a good game for that, it just feels like, what are you doing? Like, what are you actually doing as Gyro? You don't do anything else, honestly. And then next we have D tier. There's a lot of heroes in D tier where it's like you're not griefing the game if you're picking it necessarily, but it's still not great. Like Warlock can feel good in lower MMRs especially, so maybe if this was like a Herald tier list, it would be like broken. Because if you can get farm, if you can get like Ags or Fresh on this hero, you can literally like win games by yourself. That's just not happening like above 3K or something, you know? It's just not happening. Like all you do is you just sit there and heal guys, and like maybe you have a decent lane stage because you like press your little ward and your fatal bonds, but really honestly you just get run down and killed, and you just like, you know, you just pop your ult and just hope it works. So it's just something needs to change about this hero. I think the biggest thing is they keep trying to buff the slow. They just need to give this hero the ability to put the slow on the ground and then walk away. Like, it should not be a channeled ability anymore. Just let him put it on the ground, let him walk away. Yeah, that might be a little bit broken, but this hero has not seen play for, like, my entire lifetime. Like, it's not seen play since, like, 2012. So, like, please just, like, buff the hero. Give it some insane, like, broken thing, and then nerf it from there, you know? So, anyway, that's Warlock. Witch Doctor is another one of these heroes that I think the kit, it's, like, the exact opposite of Snapfire, where it's like no matter how much you buff the hero, it just feels like it doesn't matter because the kit is never going to be good enough to actually be good in high MMRs. So that's why it's this low. But I would honestly, like, the two heroes I pick as support, to be honest, I pick Snapfire, I pick Witch Doctor. I don't know. Even though they're the opposite heroes, in the sense that Snapfire is one of these heroes that like is always good no matter what. And then Witch Doctor is one of these heroes that's always bad no matter what. But it's because this hero is like a carry. You're legit trying to carry from the 5 position. Yes, you have a stun and these other things, but like you're legit just trying to run in, stun a guy, put your little maledict on him, and then kill him in the lane, like hope somebody's aggressive and running after you. And then later you're just trying to like solo people, honestly. I mean, you can straight up kill carries and mids and off lanes, and you can literally win the game by yourself. But it can feel pretty awkward and bad to do that against a lot of heroes, to be honest. And that's the problem. Is like really what you want to do with this hero is you run in, you stun, you place maledict, and then you ult. And that's like all the hero does. And if you whiff that, or you get stunned in your ult, or, you know, all that kind of stuff, if it doesn't work, if you miss your maledict or you can't run in, it's just like, what do you actually do as the hero? And that's kind of the problem. So it's very good in low MMRs where people aren't good at stopping what you do. But otherwise, this hero can just feel really bad at high MMRs. That's why it's D. I mean, personally, I would put it a little higher just for like lower pubs. But overall, just based on like, you know, divine-ish pubs, you know, 4 to 5K, like still pubs, still not the best players, but still decent. It's just not that good. It's just not as effective as it otherwise could be. AA, just a hero that this hero is all about like countering heroes that are good in the meta. And right now there's really nothing in the meta that you need to counter. Like Alchemist isn't good. You know, these big, beefy, tanky regen heroes like Necro, like Bristleback, you know, these heroes aren't good. So because this regen is not a thing, like even these heal supports are not that great. They're just middle of the road. Like healing is not like the meta right now. I mean, a Greaves is better, but that's more for like the dispel and stuff. I mean, the heal is good, but it just, the damage and all that stuff is not the best. And then also you have to make sure you're reliably hitting it on people. And then if there's not like one guy you're countering, then like you're trying to hit a lot of people and that just never works. So what, you're hitting the carry? Yeah, but the carry's like a Clinks running around. Like, are you really going to hit the carry with your ult? I don't know. So that's why it feels awkward. Veno, I think Veno and AA are kind of similar. Like, it's just like this insane magic damage ultimate that like makes team fights hard to do. But like really all you're doing is just like you're running in, pressing R on as many people as possible. And that's like fine, but is that really what you want your support to doing? A support with no stun? And then the laning stage, you just hope that Gale like is good. And if Gale's not good, like they have a dispel or they can just run away for whatever reason, or they can just turn and fight you, like that feels like shit. Like, okay, let's say you Gale a Razor in the off lane. And, like, who cares? What, are you going to run at the Razor? Like, no, the carry's not going to run at the Razor when you Gale him because you're just going to sap the carry's damage. It doesn't matter. He's just going to sit and fight you with his support sitting there. So I think that's the biggest problem with Venomancer. Shadow Shaman needs items. I just don't think this hero's as much of a 5. Like, it's okay, but it's not a good 5. It just needs items. That's really what it is. Like, if you can get items, that's great. But, like, and you can carry games, but you're just not doing that from the 5. Like, you don't want to just sit in, run in and just die. You want to, like, get these chain stuns on people, have items, and potentially get Ags Refresher, that kind of stuff. And you just can't do that from the 5 position. Elder Titan is just like one of these heroes that's either really good or really bad in the meta. It's either like S tier and it's picked all the time in like TI, or it's just never picked at all. And right now it's at the never picked at all stage. Just pretty bad. Another hero that's a 5, it's almost like you, again, want to get items. You want to get like shard, maybe not shard, but Ags and stuff run around, like get BKB, just like punch people with your stapler. And you're just not doing that right now. It's also good with the passive, and like if the passive is really good against certain heroes, and that's just not what's happening right now. Like, you're not able to take advantage of the passive based on the lineups. Io, probably just the worst of the heal supports. I just put Io down here because it's not like super popular in the meta. And I think overall, especially as a pub list, it's just Io's bad, man. People just are terrible at coordinating with the hero. It's like a heal hero, and it just passively sits back. And like, are you really going to put Io with a ranged carry? Like, I don't think so. I don't know. So that makes it really awkward too. Shadow Demon. They changed this hero. I don't even know what this... I think the last tier list I said I didn't know what the hero spell does. I still don't because I don't care because no one picks it and it's bad. That's Shadow Demon. I think they're trying to figure out a way to make this hero relevant. Like, what does this hero do? Like, this hero basically... If you think about Shadow Demon, what does he do? He, like, slows you and purges you, and he has a save, or he, like, makes illusion copies of, like, Luna or, like, Terrorblade or Naga. So, potentially, I guess he's okay against Naga, but, like... whatever. Honestly, that's not good enough. That's Shadow Demon. Not going to say much more. Wind Ranger, just not a good 5. Like, the Seb meme is over, dude. Just forget it. This almost should be off the list, to be honest. Pugna, again, a weird hero. Not a 5. No stun. Like, what are you actually doing? Like, magic damage? What? I guess. I mean, back in the day, or like, a few months ago, 6 months, a year ago, it was all about, like, the ward and healing people. And that's still possible. If the ward got nerfed a lot, changed. It's just not the same. It's not like the ward is not nearly as annoying as it once was. And the healing is like fine, but whatever, dude. Honestly, whatever. Especially with the ranged carries, like everything is ranged. Like, are you really healing them? It's not really about saving or healing them. Like, they're just kind of sitting in the back anyway. So you'd rather have a support that runs in, not just like sits back and heals people. Lion overall, just bad. Bad hero. I know everyone likes to pick it. Has stuns. I talked about it in the 4 position guide. Like, it just, the ultimate, I think, is the big problem. It's just too one-dimensional. It's just a bad ultimate. Otherwise, the hero's okay, but like, the ultimate just, if the ultimate gave more control or push or something else other than just single target damage, it would be good. But that's Lion. And then lastly, we have the F tier. So these are just like grief picks. Keeper of the Light, dead hero. Do not pick this hero ever. Zeus, not a 5. Like, you're just griefing. You're just 100% griefing. Like, pick something else. Like, pick a disruptor. It's like does magic damage and stuff, but like, or Crystal Maiden, just Snapfire, anything that does magic damage, but like actually offers control. Grim, I like a dead hero. This hero is just crap. Like, even though Doom is good, Grim is still terrible. It has a terrible win rate, and nobody picks this hero. So that just means this hero is like broken. Something's wrong with it. I mean, I potentially think you could like have a good game with it, but I don't know what is up with Grim and why it's so bad. Maybe people are just underestimating it or something, but it just literally has like a 30% win rate or something insane. And then lastly, we have Pudge. I have seen people pick Pudge 5 before, and they say, "Oh, it's not a meme. It's actually good." If you listen, I know I don't speak to the whole like Dota community. Only a few thousand people are going to watch this video, but I'm telling you right now, Pudge 5 is a grief. Stop trying to defend it. It's not good. You sit in trees and hook, and you do nothing else. Stop it. Stop playing Pudge 5, okay? It's not real. It's not a thing. I'm putting this in, like, don't pick this or you're griefing tier. It's going below F tier. Stop. Especially now with the way they changed it, and this hero is basically just like it's more of a core with the way the passive works. Like, you don't just stop sitting in my trees and trying to hook people and failing every time, or the guy bought a quelling blade anyway, so he just quelling bladed out of the tree. He got one tower hit in a hook. Like, what are you doing? Stop it, dude. Please just stop. It's time to stop. That's my message to Pudge players. Okay, so that is the 5 position tier list for patch 7.32D. And as always, let me know what you guys think. If things should be higher, lower, if I forgot somebody, those kinds of things. And if you like the video, like, comment, subscribe. If you want to see more videos like this into the future, consider going to my Patreon and supporting me there. I also offer coaching there as well. So as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.